Good evening and welcome back to the Rockville City Mayor and Council meeting number 05-23. Today is still Monday, February 27th, 2023, and we are now ready for agenda item 8, discussion and follow-up with the Charter Review Commission recommendations. Welcome, Ms. Farrell.
We have Chair Owens here that's going to deliver the report for the
wonderful.
following.
Hi, Kevin. Welcome, Kevin Owens.
Express my appreciation for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. I also like to recognize the many members of the Charter Review Commission who are here in the audience with me today. I'd like to begin with praise for all the residents of Rockville who came to the hearing on the Charter Review Commission's recommendations, and for those who have submitted the documents and letters to the Mayor and Council regarding the Commission's recommendations, many of which are attached to tonight's agenda packet. There are many opinions expressed, both in support and in opposition to several of the recommendations of the Commission, and I will not take the time to comment on all of these statements, but I did want to address one of the commenters' points made during the hearing regarding the Commission's citation in its report to the Supreme Court case of Minor versus Happersett on page 67 of the Commission's report. Commenter asserted that the Supreme Court case that was cited by the Commission was overruled by a higher court or the 19th Amendment. The commenter further claimed that if he were to cite this particular case to a judge, he suspects that he would be in severe trouble with the judge and would get a call from bar counsel about his fitness to practice law. I take such comments seriously, as it targets the integrity of the Commission's report. I'm here to tell you the commenter's claims about the validity of the case cited are not true. First, the case of Minor versus Happersett was not overruled by the 19th Amendment. In fact, the Minor decision has been cited by state and federal courts 176 times since the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920. The Minor decision has been cited by the United States Supreme Court several times in the past 40 years, most recently in 1982. It has most recently been relied upon by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in May of 2022 and the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in June of 2021. Now, I'm not going to provide my own analysis of the Minor decision. It's laid out in the report, or its importance for the proposition that the Charter Review Commission has held it out for. Instead, I am going to read from an article on this very topic published by my former law professor, Congressman Jamie Raskin, on this very topic. And I would like to thank former Councilmember Tom Moore for including Professor Raskin's article to the record, and it may be found starting on page 109 of tonight's agenda materials. In his article, Congressman Raskin argues that the current blanket exclusion of non-citizens from the ballot is neither constitutionally required nor historically normal. During the long history of alien suffrage, neither the Supreme Court nor any lower federal court or state court ever found the practice unconstitutional. On the contrary, and I quote Congressman Raskin, numerous state courts explicitly or implicitly endorsed non-citizen voting in state and local elections. In 1874, according to Congressman Raskin, the court in Minor versus Happersett, the case cited by the Commission, cited the practice of non-citizen voting for the proposition that citizenship and suffrage are independent legal categories which do not necessarily imply one another. Citizenship has not in all cases been made a condition precedent to the enjoyment of the right of suffrage. Congressman Raskin further noted, Minor versus Happersett, quote, was not a lone shot in the dark. In 1904, the Supreme Court briefly revisited the topic of non-citizen voting and gave an even more explicit endorsement on its constitutionality. The occasion was the case of Pope versus Williams, a Maryland case, which upheld against equal protection and general constitutional attacks a Maryland statute requiring new residents to make a declaration of intent to become Maryland citizens 1 year before registering to vote. In emphasizing the privilege to vote is within the jurisdiction of the state or local government. It is the local government's role to direct the terms that it may seem proper. In upholding Maryland's voting law, Congressman Raskin noted that the Supreme Court, again citing Minor versus Happersett, emphasizing the state might provide that person of foreign birth could vote without being naturalized. Congressman Raskin also noted that as recently as 1974, Supreme Court noted that citizenship is not compulsory criteria for limiting voting rights. Sugarman versus Goodall. Clarifying and addressing that point, I would now like to turn our attention to the staff report for the Charter Review Commission. The Charter Review Commission provided recommendations on 21 topics with a total of 30 items for consideration in its September 30th, 2022 report. Of these recommendations, several were intended for consideration by the Mayor and Council for immediate action and implementation. At least 2 recommendations are appropriate for referral for an advisory ballot referendum for the 2023 election cycle, and the remaining require research and consultation prior to any processes or implementation. I'd like to begin with the items that are ready for immediate action and implementation. First one being issue F, the process for filling a vacancy in the office of mayor and a vacancy in the office of council member when the vacancy occurs after the 24th month of a term. The Charter Review Commission unanimously recommended that the mayor and council create a precise, open, transparent, and definitive administrative process for the election of the council member when a vacancy occurs after the 24th month of a term. The commission was unable to provide a very specific recommendation of what that process should be because the commission believes it is the mayor and council's prerogative to determine that. But there's no reason to delay that beyond this year.
Councilmember Feinberg.
I wanted to see how you and Mr. Owen would like to proceed. Do you want to go item and have a discussion or go through the entire green sheets?
Whichever you would prefer. I do appreciate the way Mr. Kernick handled his, so perhaps if we went item by item.
I would like to suggest that to my colleagues, and Madam Mayor, it might expedite the conversation.
Yep, that's what I thought we would do. Councilmember Burchell, I saw your hand up as well.
So are we going item by item?
If that's okay with
That's
everyone.
with me, yeah, it's fine.
works,
That
I mean-
makes it easier.
Right.
I had a comment on issue F. And that is, we went through this last term and did not succeed in finding a 5th member, and that's why this is here, I presume. To me, the process last term was fine except for one thing, and that one thing was having a tiebreaker if you can't, would have solved whatever, and the tiebreaker could be, I spoke to Councilmember Ashton earlier, could be, for example, ranked choice voting in that process would probably have done it, but even then, if that doesn't quite do it, then you just need a tiebreaker, which could be as simple as a coin flip of the last 2 remaining candidates. So other than that, I mean, the process was good in the sense that it was all open. Candidates came in, they were interviewed publicly, quite a few people watched. They could make their own judgments. Where it broke down was, we voted, but we couldn't come up with 3 on any one candidate, and that's where I felt that the process itself was fine, except that a tiebreaker at the end would have solved that issue.
Councilmember Ashton.
Thank you. This was in our resolution for the CRC to explore, and I really appreciate that you went through each of the items here. I know that we gave you all a lot. Just for the record, A through P. Sorry and thank you. But there are so many topics that are important for us. I look at this one as unfinished business from the last mayor and council. I will admit, and some of us here on council were, and some people watching were one of the 20 plus who interviewed for that position. It would have been nice for all the energy that everyone put in for the mayor and council to make a selection. And I think that is something that needs to happen. People get sick, someone may be called to duty if they're in the military. There are a bunch of reasons why there can be a vacancy. And I agree that in general, the process was pretty good. I think there were some questions about, some people got virtual, some people didn't know that was an option. Just clarifying that participation process and then making sure that there can be a selection at the end. I do think this is something that we should put on the agenda to just look at what the current rules say about the process and make some fine tuning so this can be done in this mayor and council, and so whoever is here next time is set up in the event that there is a vacancy. So I would like to agendize this item.
Councilmember Feinberg.
Thank you. I totally agree with Councilmember Ashton. I would actually like to suggest, I know we're going to be preoccupied in the next probably 6 weeks with budget because it's budget season. Sorry, it probably will eclipse us, but I think staff would want to be paid next year for their work. But being serious, I think that's going to preoccupy everyone. But I would like to see if we can direct staff to come back with some suggestions, do some research, see where there may be other ideas other than a coin toss. There may be something out there. And come back and agendize it if possible for early May. And the reason I'm saying that is, of course, once we've done the budget and there are things, there are some dates we don't have mayor and council meetings. There's MML, there's July 4th, Memorial Day, that if it's something that would require an ordinance change and that process, or if it's even a charter change, then we need the time to get through and clean that up. So what I'm suggesting is like the first week in May that we start the process if staff feels they could be ready by then. And I look to my colleagues, sorry.
Councilmember Prashela.
Yeah, I think agendizing on that time frame is fine. I do have a question of our city clerk, director of council operations, or even the board of supervisors of elections. What happens in a regular election if there's a tie? Do we speak to that in our city code? Because I know there was an election in Virginia not too long ago that was decided by a coin flip.
You would do a recount just to make sure that there wasn't a tie before you go to a process for tie breaking.
Right, but do we have a tiebreaker in the city code for a city election?
No, we don't.
Okay, so I think it's even more, with four of us voting, okay, coming up with a tie is not too far-fetched. It happened many times in that process. But and Councilmember Ashton suggested to me the ranked choice voting. I believe our ballots that we did amongst the four of us would have facilitated that just fine. I think that would have been a good way, probably would have taken care of 90% of the cases, but you always need something at the end in case you can't break that tie, and how do you break that tie?
And I'll support coming back with an agendized item. I would like to see what other jurisdictions nearby do in both of these cases when there's a tie and when there's a vacancy. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but let's see what else is out there to make it better. Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you all for your comments. I have seen how ranked choice voting works at a population level within the body of the mayor and council. It'd be interesting to see how that works, and I agree that it could resolve probably a good deal of discrepancies should there be discrepancies. I also support agendizing this so that, as Madam Mayor said, we can learn from what other jurisdictions are doing to see if it's something that we might want to implement here or some modification thereof. That's all. Thank you.
Just so you know, it would be a runoff election is what is in the code for now if there was a tie in an election process. So that's what we would do.
Okay, moving on to
Great, thank you.
the next item for immediate action implementation would be the alternative voting systems, the addition of a none of the above option on the municipal ballots. The Charter Review Commission recommended that the city implement a none of the above ballot option. This may require a code change, but there is no additional logistical information or election operations changes that would need to be put in place in order to implement such a recommendation, and therefore it would be ripe for the mayor and council to act upon.
Mr. Owen, what is the purpose for that recommendation?
As set forth in the report, the commission, by a majority vote, recommended that none of the above be added so that voters had an opportunity to express a position if none of the candidates were to their liking.
Yeah, I did read your report. I just wanted it publicly stated. So in the conversation we had prior to this, the issue was raised about the ballot getting too long, and therefore we really couldn't have, the third language on there. So I'm just bringing it up in that context. I think people have the right to not vote if they don't think there's somebody, but that's an interesting thought. Councilmember Ashton.
Couldn't they also vote on what they wanted to vote on? I've seen some on different boards and other organizations, for example, where, you know, one topic gets 10 votes and the next one gets 8 because people just didn't like their choices. So and that was kind of a none of the above, if you will.
So, disclaimer here, I wrote a minority opinion on this topic because I did not agree with the implementation, but I do understand that the ballots do allow for a write-in option for those who were not interested in any of the named candidates. Commissioner Valeri would like to be heard on the topic.
I did write that part.
Yes.
I was going to give him a break since I did write the majority report on the none of the above. So the jurisdiction that we looked at was the state of Nevada, and the whole thought process behind it was that without it, anybody who is elected into office feels that they have a mandate of the people. So that if you look at voting and you see that none of the above cannot win the election, but you see none of the above did, then you can also see that the voters are not necessarily electing you with a full-throated mandate, but that there's some work to do within the city, and it's another way to provide that sort of feedback. And it's worked out very well in the state of Nevada, and looking at it from that perspective, and also the perspective of Rockville always being cutting edge. That was kind of what we were looking at as another engagement point.
Thank you, Ms. Valeri. Councilmember Pershela.
Right, so it's not uncommon, for example, especially on the council races, for somebody to vote for, in past elections, for 3 council members and leave their 4th choice on, you know, they didn't have a 4th choice, so they just would vote for 1 or 2 or 3 instead of all 4. So that's another way of doing that. I'm not particularly in favor of this. I believe there were even elections where they didn't vote for the mayor, but they voted for council members. So you're not forced to vote. That's my opinion.
Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thank gentleman for clarifying. I was going to ask the question that he already answered with regard to potentially a write-in that perhaps already exists. It certainly would not necessarily get at being able to tally up a true none of the above option, but does provide. I've used it before in certain elections, not in Rockville proper, to voice my discontent. But I think there are multiple ways to get at it. But I do recognize the spirit of what was presented in the majority opinion, and do think that it could be partially captured by the write-in part, perhaps, but not fully.
Councilmember Pershela.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Mr. Owen and Ms. Valeri, I appreciate your input on this, but where do we stand on this? I don't, personally, I don't sense a desire to move with this, but I just think we need to be clear about that.
So the recommendation was made as a majority vote by the Charter Review Commission. The belief is that the mayor and council can make a decision. The decision could be not to implement.
Councilmember Pershela.
I'll just be the first. I don't think it should be implemented.
Councilmember Feinberg.
I would agree. Not to implement.
I think that there are ways to do that by not voting on that and choosing who you want. So I think because you get to choose 4 or 3 or 1, you'll be able to see that in the votes. And actually you can see by what district you didn't win in. So that's also very telling.
All right, Mr. Owen.
All right, moving
I
on.
think we're,
Okay.
yeah, ready.
Moving
for
on to issue J. Again, this is under the category of action and implementation. Increasing the number of members on the Board of Supervisors of Elections. The Charter Review Commission recommends increasing the size of the Board of Supervisors of Elections to 7 members. I did hear the conversation with Mr. Kernick from the BSE just immediately preceding this. This was couched in an immediate decision, but requested caution about whether or not implementing it during the cycle would be appropriate. I do understand Councilmember Feinberg's point on even if they're not fully trained, they're going to be there to help out. But either way, this is an issue that is ripe for a decision by the Mayor and Council.
Councilmember Ashton?
So I think we covered this one. I'm in favor of increasing. I think that there's a lot of work to do on the BOSC, and even if they're learning or watching, that gives an opportunity to have a cadre of folks who are trained up for the next election.
Councilmember Feinberg?
And as I did discuss in the previous conversation, I'm absolutely there. I think we should move forward for that and do it now.
I'm seeing thumbs up from Councilmember Prashela and Councilmember Dr. Miles. I will vote as well. Sorry, I'm kind of sleeping here. Not really sleeping, but just not feeling well. I agree with the votes of my colleagues. Mr. Owen, are you ready for issue 11?
Yes, issue L, actually. Issue L, the appointment process for the members of the
great.
Board of Supervisors of Elections. The Charter Review Commission recommends modifying the charter so that all members of the BSE, whether newly appointed, reappointed, or to a subsequent term, or appointed to fill a vacancy, are appointed by the council.
They are appointed, I mean, they're nominated by the mayor, but confirmed by the council. So that's what you want to change?
That is the recommendation.
Councilmember Ashton, Councilmember Prashela, then Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Just a question for our city attorney. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, but I believe there's some positions that are by the mayor and some by the, you had a distinguishing factor in the past. I just want to make sure we have a level set understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true, but the clerk has just reminded me that the BSC is actually the members are appointed, are nominated by the mayor and confirmed by mayor and council.
Except if it's filling a vacancy, council can put up a nomination. If it's to fill an unexpired vacancy, a council can put up a nomination to be appointed.
Commissioner Kelly wanted to be heard on the issue.
If you don't mind. So the problem we have right now is you got 3 situations. You know, a new BSE member, and it says that the mayor nominates that. You've got a filling a vacancy, says the council does that, and then you've got reappointments, and there's nothing that's said about reappointments. So what we thought was
Well,
that
reappointments, that's the same as filling as a new member.
well,
So
thank you for that opinion, but it's not clear in the language.
that's how it's done here. So the mayor would nominate either a new member or to reappoint, and it would be confirmed by mayor and council.
I think that's a very reasonable opinion, but it's not in the code. So my point is that what we felt in the working group was that it would be a lot simpler if there was one way to fill all positions. Because there, as y'all know, there is some controversy about whether or not the mayor can nominate, like, to fill a vacancy. And the mayor is a member of the council, so the mayor has the same rights as any other council member to make a nomination to fill a vacancy. And the history, by the way, of nominations to fill new positions is that the vast majority of those nominations have come from the council. So that's the reality of your history. And the mayor has given me a look, but I went back to mayor and council records going back to 1987. And I have numbers in my report, but the vast majority are nominated by the council. That's the public record. I'm just repeating. I didn't make this up. That's what's in the public record.
So, members of Mayor and Council, just to be clear, that the mayor is responsible for appointing new members. So if a member of the Board of Supervisors, Board of Elections, if their term is up, they don't have a right to just continue. So once that term is vacant, the mayor nominates and the mayor and council appoints.
I'm not seeing any hands.
May I read a statistic?
Councilmember Pershela.
Thank you. I actually have the charter code up and I'm searching for it. But I'm not going to read any code at the moment. I do recall, however, that I personally nominated, maybe in the last term, for Board of Supervisors, which was not a successful nomination, but I actually did it. And so I'm a little confused about when a council member can make a nomination. But I will say I'm totally in support of any council member or the mayor being able to make those nominations. I think having, for something that's so fundamental to our democracy, to have only the mayor be able to make nominations, I don't think that's right. Thank you.
So again, the data. So I'd like to, historical data says that, council members made 38 of the 40 nominations for new or reappointed BSE members, and 8 of the 9 vacancy appointments made since the 1991 charter amendments. That's what the public record. I'm sorry?
Yeah, Mr. Kelly, that may be because the way we do things is the mayor makes a recommendation, and then a council member must nominate, and then another council member must second. So I think that's why that.
It could be, but I'm saying what the public record says, okay? The public record.
And that is correct, because that's the way it goes. The mayor makes the recommendation, the council members make the nomination, and the second, everybody votes.
That's not visible in the public record.
Well, again, so when the mayor, it says appoint in the charter, but really what it means is nominate. So for new members, the mayor nominates or appoints. Once the mayor nominates, she doesn't do that in an open meeting. She simply submits a name to the mayor and council. The mayor and council will then confirm. By confirming, one member will move the item. A second member will second it, and then they'll vote on it. That's different. I mean, that's how the process works. So that's the interpretation of somehow that means the mayor and council are appointing the members is simply not correct.
Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This conversation has been useful because I think there is some confusion even among us sitting before you. I do think that as a general rule, I associate myself with the comments of our colleague, Councilmember Pershela, especially as we open the council to get bigger, hopefully have some more representation. And I do think, again, I believe it was my understanding there were a couple of boards and commissions where council members themselves can make recommendations about people who could serve, and then that will go before the full body. But I think to clarify it so that it is consistent and it's a clear understanding among us as the people who are elected to serve as well as the public would be very helpful. That's all.
Councilmember Pershela.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm now reading from Charter Code. This is Article 3, Section 2, Item A, the first sentence. There shall be a Board of Supervisors of Elections consisting of 5 members who shall be appointed by the council. Okay, and I'm going to stop reading that part right there. But then lower in Section A, it speaks specifically about vacancies, and now it says vacancies on the board shall be filled by the mayor with approval of the council for the remainder of the unexpired term. So I first of all, I think the code itself just has to be clarified so we really know what that means. Secondly, I will point out that in the Article 3, Section 2A, that there is a distinction made between what apparently is a regular appointment process versus a vacancy. So that, it's confusing, so in that sense, it needs to be clarified, but I still go back to what I said and what Dr. Miles agreed to, is that all of this should be, any council member should be able to make the appointment or the nomination, because it's so fundamental to our election.
And that would be consistent with the Charter Review Commission's recommendation. And given the confusion, I think a revisit of the language to make sure that there is clarity in the way it's described in the code would be in accordance with what the Commission is requesting here and some of the later recommendations on clarifying language in the code.
And just to clarify, the other body that I'm aware of where a council member can make nominations is the Rockville Housing Enterprises. And I have done that too successfully. So.
Issue N1. Oh.
Mr. Owen, hold one sec. I just saw Councilmember Ashton's hand go up.
So I get the reason of allowing anyone from council. I could see that in some situations why that makes total sense. I guess one of the things we learned is that there are very few differences between mayor and council members. And the mayor presides over the meeting and also has a special role with really making nominations for boards and commissions. I just wanted to speak to our city attorney and say, what is your understanding of those differences, and is this one of those unique roles that we would be potentially taking away?
No, I think you're correct, that really the only difference between the mayor's responsibilities and members of the council's responsibilities would be the mayor in certain instances can nominate or appoint members to certain boards and commissions, and then the full body would then confirm, meaning they would vote on it in an open meeting. There are certain boards and commissions where any member can make the appointment, the RHE and also the BSE.
To follow up on Councilmember Ashton's comment, the mayor in Rockville cannot make a motion or second a motion. So that's another difference in the mayor and the council member. Councilmember Feinberg.
And along with that, you run for mayor separately, not. Put your mic on. I'm really bad today. Thank you. Just yanked me. Along with that, unlike in some other jurisdictions where it's the top vote getter becomes the mayor, that's not our situation here. You run separately for mayor, and therefore there are certain duties that you have and powers. You are empowered differently than the council members, which to me also speaks to that same nature, that that's one of the privileges of the mayor, is to appoint, and on the other hand, he or she can't make a motion or second.
Councilmember Shayla.
Yeah, I've never been too concerned that the mayor, for almost every board or commission save two, makes the nominations. That's fine with me, and I've 99% of the time gone along with that, though I have occasionally voted against. But this is different. It's actually fundamental to our democracy. Any one of us who are elected could be running in the next election. To me, this is just such a fundamentally different board or commission. They're not advisory. They actually execute. They run the election. So, that's why I'm of the opinion that any of the elected can make a nomination.
Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I guess the conversation is very interesting, and I think that one of the things I posed to my colleagues is there seems to be some discrepancy in the code. Certainly, it has been the practice, as was stated, that the mayor makes recommendations and we make motions and approve them. But even with regard to the board of supervisors and elections, there seems to be a discrepancy between empty seats versus a vacancy. So I'm curious, what would my colleagues propose that the mayor also makes the recommendations for the vacancies too? and change the code that way. I guess what I'm asking more broadly is is there any change that needs to be made to the code to make it consistent? Because there seems to be some confusion, at least among me, but I can't speak from my colleagues.
Councilmember Priscilla.
From what I just read, I think at the very least, if there is to be a distinction between filling a vacancy and filling either an original or a reappointment, I think if that difference is to be made, then that needs to be clarified. Because it's a little confusing. Anyway, at the end of the day, it's a value statement, how that's going to be handled. And I just think when you have, it could be a mayor who's running for re-election, is in charge of filling, well, in our situation, maybe 2 vacancies, maybe 4 in this current election, and to put that all in the hands of a person who, while maybe mayor, is also perhaps a political candidate, yes or no, who knows, but that just seems like a lot of power in the hands of one person. Thank you.
If I could respond to that, because I think the same would be true for a council member. When I ran in 15, the first time I ran for mayor in 15, I beat the candidate for mayor on the slate, but I ended up with 4 of that individual's slate mates. So the same thing could have been said then, that, you give a block, you give the authority to a block of people, which is why I think it is important that we look at this from a holistic point of view. And the comment that was made earlier that the mayor runs at large and is one vote, is only one person that gets elected mayor, as opposed to the top 4 or soon to be top 6 that come out of the council race. I think there's a difference there. But I just throw that out because I think if there is that concern of stacking the deck, then I think that could go in any direction.
So this is an interesting conversation. The point that I've failed to make well, and Councilmember Feinberg pointed out something I didn't know, which is the mayor is not permitted to make a nomination. Did I understand that correctly?
No, she cannot make a motion or
okay.
second a motion.
So essentially what the situation that you're in is that you've set it up so that the public record can't reflect reality. Am I getting that right? With the public record, so that's called transparency. So if the public wants to see, as I tried to see, what nominations actually come from the mayor, I can't see that. So
You would have to go to the agendas.
I beg your pardon?
You have to go to the agendas.
It's not in the agendas.
Yeah, no, every agenda, tonight we did that. Every agenda will say who is running, who is being nominated.
Right.
And whether it's an expired or unexpired term or new.
So I'll go back and look at my spreadsheets, but I read every agenda and every set of minutes, every one.
Councilmember Ashton and then Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Even with, there is some balance with the mayor making appointments and council filling vacancies, so there's a bit of a tug, a check and balance, if you will, because there inevitably have been vacancies. So that, I think, is an interesting way to look at it. But I do think that the language is not very clear, and I have 3 computers up here, so if you see me looking, I'm reading. The language is not very clear, and I think it could stand to be clarified on those 2 roles, in addition to the reappointment.
Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the gentleman's point is well taken in that if one were to look at our agenda for tonight, it's unclear that the mayor is actually making recommendations for people to fill these things. And as a result, it's, from a transparency standpoint, it looks like it's just coming from us. So either we need to the point that our colleague, Councilmember Ash says, make or tidy up the language not only in the code, but perhaps in our agendas as well, so that the public has a better sense of the inner workings, the so-called sausage making, because I think it's important from a transparency perspective. And I still do think, I think they're, to the mayor's point, one that she brought up earlier in terms of, slates, I think that's a valid point too, in terms of an ability to shift or stack the deck one way versus another. I do think the more diffuse that is, the less likely that any one individual can kind of overwhelm a process. And certainly, Madam Mayor, again, just spirit of the example is not a reflection upon you, but just a reflection upon what can happen. We saw what happened in Georgia, not the most recent governor's race, but the previous one, where the guy was kind of, not only Secretary of State, but actually running, and the specter just, it's hard to minimize how much influence that perhaps he did or did not have in that election. So on a microcosm, I think, making the ability to fill the positions of people who oversee the election, put that in as many hands as possible as opposed to just one, I think makes sense from a democratic perspective. Though I do take and understand the point made about slates. I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miles, and I do agree with you about Georgia. I see it a little differently here, but one way to quickly fix this would be that on the sheet today, where it said subject boards and commission appointments, it could just say, instead of staff recommends, it could just say the mayor recommends the following for members of the boards and commissions. That would make it clear then that a member of the council has to make the motion and the second. So I just think, could do it that way. Councilmember Ashton.
I agree with that in terms of making the record clear. I also think in the action items, it not just show who made the motion, but that who made the nomination as well. So that's clear, because you will see it in the video, but not everyone is going to go back and listen to all the videos. So if we just clarify that in the minutes, and I also think that the code needs to be clarified as well, just to make it super clean and clear of who can do what.
I'm wondering if we want to give direction tonight, then how we want that to go. Councilmember Pershela.
I'm with the Charter Review Commission on this one.
Councilmember Dr. Miles, I'm sorry, I just saw your hand.
Oh, that's all good. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just I also support the Charter Review Commission's recommendation on this item.
I think I've shared that. I think it should be clear in the code, which is it can be interpreted a little fuzzy, that the mayor makes nominations, the council can do vacancies, and that the mayor can reappoint, and that the council, if they don't agree, they can vote against.
So, okay, so what we're talking about now is amending the charter under the BSE section. So currently, under this part of the charter, it's any member of mayor and council can nominate a member to the BSE, and then the full body will then confirm. And if there's a vacancy on the BSE, it's the mayor who could appoint a member to fill that vacancy. So what we're now saying is, it appears what the body is saying is to amend the charter so that so that any member of mayor and council can continue to appoint members to the BSE, but if there's a vacancy, rather than have the mayor fill the vacancy for the unexpired term, that it would be any member can nominate someone to fill that unexpired vacancy. Is that, because I believe that's what the CRC is recommending, correct? So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Dr. Miles, and then Councilmember Pershela.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My understanding, the city attorney, I thought it was the opposite, the current situation, the opposite, in that the mayor appoints new members, but or vacancies midterm vacancies are filled by the council. I could be off, but I just want some clarification on that.
Right.
And in terms of what we are voting, I think it's still to be determined. I think 2 of us thus far supported the Charter Review Commissions. I think we're still waiting for others to get.
Right, so for most of the boards and commissions that are created by mayor and council, it is the mayor who nominates the member and the full body will then confirm. That was I was responding to a question from council member Ashton. But for this particular commission, the board, the BSC, is any member of the body can nominate and then the full body would confirm. It's that way for BSC and for RHE, the Rockville Housing Enterprises.
Councilmember Prashela.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to address a point made by Councilmember Ashton where council can decline to approve a nomination by the mayor. Well, that happened once on the planning commission, and that planning commissioner continued to serve 5 years afterwards because there was never an additional nomination to fill that particular spot. So we had a planning commissioner who served 5 years without being approved by the council. So if we want to give the mayor the appointment privilege or right, whatever you call it, then I say there's got to be something in the code where if the council does not approve that, there must be a nomination of somebody else. And so that happened. That commissioner is no longer on the planning commission, but we have to clarify what it means not to approve a nomination.
So I think that we're sort of mixing apples and oranges. In terms of different boards and commissions, depending on how that board or commission is created, some boards or commissions are created by resolution. Some are created in the code. So you would have to examine the enabling resolution or code provision that created that particular board or commission. And then that, whatever the resolution or related ordinance, enabling ordinance would say, that's how it's done. So if the body wanted to address how members are nominated and confirmed, you would have to go to each of the enabling resolutions or ordinances. So that's just in general. But I think what we're discussing tonight is just the particular charter section for the BSE. So I think we keep sort of hopping back and forth, and that might be leading to some of the confusion.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. Councilmember Ashton.
So, yes, to clarify, there was some mix-up in the beginning with the opposite, but in looking at both the code, the charter, as well as the BSC, the CRC report, it notes the council, the charter requires that the council appoint new BSC members, and the mayor fill vacancies, so that's what it says.
Right, but
Yeah.
in the charter, council is defined as mayor and council. It's defined as the body, even though it says council.
Right, so the mayor or any council member
Right.
can make an appointment, so.
To the BSC,
Correct,
correct.
right.
And if there's a vacancy, it's the mayor who would fill that unexpired term or appoint someone to fill the unexpired term.
So in essence, anyone can make a nomination,
Correct.
correct?
For the BSC, yes, that is
Yes.
correct.
So what is the desire to change exactly?
I think the desire would be for, if there's a vacancy, that not only, because right now only the mayor can appoint to fill the vacancy of the BSC, and I guess you can speak for the recommendation yourself.
Right, the
but I think
recommendation
they would
is
want-
to allow the council members also to appoint or nominate for a vacancy, not just the mayor for the appointment. And also to clarify the language.
I agree with clarifying the language for sure.
So
Councilmember Feinberg.
I was just waiting, so in effect, if I'm understanding all this, it would be broadening the power of the council for vacancies on the BSE, that instead of it being the mayor who would nominate, it would be the ability of anyone, mayor or council member, for a vacancy on the BSE.
Rather than the mayor appoint, then the mayor
Correct.
or council be able to nominate and confirm.
Right, right. So it's it's an expansion of council powers.
For the appointment and the VSE for vacancies, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I have a question. Madam Mayor, may I speak?
Yes.
Okay. So how else would there be an opportunity to be on the BSC other than a vacancy? So
I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but if someone's already appointed, but they vacate their position, or vacate their position before the term is up, that would create the vacancy.
right. So and the mayor can do that, but
To
when
fill the unexpired term.
to fill the unexpired. So it's really a matter of unexpired terms.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Persala.
Thank you. Another way to state it is you're just making it more consistent between vacancy and the appointment or reappointment. That's all. It's just cleaning it up to make it more consistent.
Correct. And if there was a provision and a discussion about extending the terms on the BSC, and if the terms were extended, you're going to see more vacancies as opposed to expired terms to be appointed anew. And so it would likely be a more common occurrence if the terms for the BSC were extended.
Weighing heavily on me is this and the challenge of slates and slates making it on. I think, to me, this way allows some checks and balances. I do agree with my colleague. Then, if the council disagrees and no one votes to approve that, there should be some language to deal with that. But the reality is, Rockville has slates, and that creates challenges. In some cases, if people use them as voting blocks. I don't think they're intended to be voting blocks, but if that happens, then you at least have some level of check and balance.
Councilmember Persala.
Yeah, I don't follow that logic because, the voting block can be the same there even if the mayor appoints and people and a block just declines to make that official. But in reality, it's very rare for anybody appointed to any board or commission to not be unanimously approved. And however, there are important exceptions to that, where sometimes council feels they have to step in to make an appointment. And I certainly did that for the Rockville Housing Enterprises one time. And anyway, I think we just need to ascertain exactly where each of us stand. I think it's pretty clear for me and Dr. Miles, but others have been, I think, on the other side, but I can't understand because there's too many words going around.
Councilmember Feinberg.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that we bring this one back.
Are you on?
Yes, I am. I'm on.
All right.
Whoa. No problem, Councilmember. I would suggest that, given that there's several other items in here, and I'm not diminishing the value of this one, but maybe each of us wants to think it through, and I would suggest we bring this issue L back. And I don't know if my colleagues will agree, and then we continue on with the discussion, because there are so many others to get through, and maybe we can make more progress.
I agree.
Thank you, Councilmember Feinberg. I agree as well.
moving on to what hopefully is an easier one, because I've heard the discussions with the Board of Supervisors of Elections regarding issue N1. The Charter Review Commission recommends the city increase the number of ballot drop-off boxes from 1 to 2 for this election cycle, but I've heard the discussion earlier that there may be plans to add at least 3 or 4. So that is something that we believe, the BSC apparently also believes, would be something that we can implement immediately and without having any further discussion or need for information.
Councilmember Ashton.
I support this, and I just wanted to go back to the last one for a second. We didn't discuss the minority report that talked about another process by which this is the appointments of the BSC are depoliticized in general. So perhaps when that comes back, we can go into the minority report a bit more.
All right, are we ready for 03?
All right, 03. Setting the politics and the discussion on the voting age aside, this is a topic for which there does not need to be any logistics or other staff information about how to implement reducing the voting age to 16, as the voting rolls already exist. And the Maryland law permits the registration of 16-year-olds to vote. And so what I understand from staff is that all that needs to occur in order to implement this is by action of the mayor and council. Now, the mayor and council may want a further public comment, but at least from a non-political, strictly implementation standpoint, this is a topic that is ready for decision.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Thank you. So when this came up under Board of Supervisors of Elections, we just blew right past it because it was going to require a charter amendment, and nobody objected to the fact that we didn't address it at that time. So the question I have is why would we would address it this time in this agenda item?
Councilmember Ashton.
I think that it's worthy of a discussion to see if if the next council deals with it, if it goes to referenda, if we agree with it. I believe there's just over 500 people. I think this is one where the county system works already, whereas some of the other ones, you have to define a whole other system, which has some impact on cost,
Right.
As well as operational figuring things out.
Right, and we can discuss that when we talk about the non-citizen voting, because that does trigger issues about separate voter rolls. The 520 some odd registered 16 and 17-year-olds is a number that I don't know which is the chicken or egg, whether or not 16 and 17-year-olds are not registering because they know they can't yet vote, or if they're just not interested in voting. I think that number is a bit of a misleading issue on the topic.
Can I finish my comments?
Yes.
I would also just note that the way it works right now is that if someone pursues a permit and license, that they can register at that time. So it's built into the DMV process.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I agree with Mr. Owen that the actual numbers of currently registered 16, 17-year-olds is irrelevant to this discussion. However, what I am interested in is the packet page 81, issue 03, that in the recommendation, it says in part, this will require charter amendment and additional research would be necessary to determine actions necessary for implementation, including possible code amendments as well. So maybe city staff can go into what the additional research would entail, and also the timing of being able to do this before the election.
That was for non-citizen voting.
Correct. The additional charter and code provisions actually were related to the non-citizen voting. After the report was issued, we did have, I did have dialogue with the city clerk's office, who did indicate that this is not something that requires any additional staff resources in order to get the implementation for the voting roll.
No, I understand that, but I'm looking specifically at issue 03, And this particular issue spoke only to the 16 and 17-year-old vote and not to the non-citizen voting. That's why I brought it up here, because this recommendation was specifically to the 16 and 17-year-old vote. So apparently, that really was meant for the non-citizen voting.
But if you're talking about registered voters and allowing 16, 17-year-olds, there's some non-citizen 16, 17-year-olds as well. So you can't discriminate against the registered voters if you're going to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote.
Because
Councilmember
non-citizens
Miles.
are registered as 16 and 17-year-olds?
Well, those who are non-citizens, they can drive. They are entered in MD voters. And so with those 16 and 17-year-olds that have license, they're entered in the MD voter system, and MD voters goes to the state of Maryland voter registration. So they both would be in there, 18-year-olds and 16 and 17-year-olds who receive a driver's license.
And irrespective of whether they are citizens or not?
Correct.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Councilmember Dr. Miles, did I see your hand?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, she just answered the question I was going to pose. I think that, now I'll just make my comments here. We've received a lot of verbal testimony, written testimony on many items, and I think even more so than non-citizen voting. I've seen probably more, again, this is me anecdotally checking email and such, about the 16 and 17-year-olds, which I find surprising. Not good surprise, not bad surprise, just surprised. It's pretty cool. I'm glad that people are engaged, perhaps because of the media coverage of it. I wanted to dispel a couple things. So there was a lot of talk about adolescents this age being too immature to vote. And there was a lot of talk about brain science and such. I do want to just say, from a developmental perspective, I mean, we don't become so-called adults until about 25, 26 in terms of brain development. That's when that prefrontal cortex is developed and we have a better understanding about the long-term implications of our decisions. I think that if similarly, which is why there's a number of provisions in place that sort of help children transition from the pre-adolescent, adolescent to, I call, so-called adults, 20, 22, 24, like military recruits. I call them just late adolescents, in my opinion. That said, we do entrust them with a number of things. As Chief Brito, I think he had a conversation with his child about, driving. It's like, this is a 2-ton weapon, which is a car. And we do know that kids, adolescents don't make the greatest of decisions, but there are rules in place to help them make better decisions to that end. And so generally speaking, and I'll take a step back and talk about brain science and talk more about sort of expansion. I do support this more broadly. I do support the process of getting the discussion going, be it a ballot initiative or what have you, getting whatever additional research. But I am very impressed with the 16, 17-year-olds, not only that who testified, but, knocking doors. I've been humbled. I've been called to task about the youth, because the decisions we make do affect them. Again, my bias being a pediatrician, I do cater towards youth, but really was held to task in terms of questions about the environment and recognizing that I need to do more. So I do support them being allowed to vote and to get this process going. Now, in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ashton.
Thank you. I have previously, when this came up, shared that 16-year-olds can drive. We give them that responsibility, and that is a very mature thing to do. I've been working since I was 14. There are teenagers who contribute at home. There are some arguments about, well, are they just going to be votes for their parents? There are plenty of spouses who have votes for their spouses. Someone says, just tell me who to vote for. I think that from what I've seen in today's children around here, especially, they are inspiring. They care about the world around them. They're getting involved. They're actually more close to American government studies than some adults because they take it at that time. And so that, and I also, took heavily that the CRC had a unanimous recommendation where there were many minority reports across this entire piece. So this is an issue that I think, as a council we should explore and we should honor. I also think we should maybe, look at talking to youth about this. There has not been anything in any of the student newspapers about this, I don't think, that we have helped to place. But I think this should be something that we explore and give our students a chance. There are many student leaders who are leading on a variety of issues, and I honor that.
Councilmember Feinberg and then Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this, among some of the other questions that we also have before us, such as whether or not to go to districts, whether to have term limits, whether to have enfranchise those who are not citizens, as well as this one. They are foundational to the way our city has been governed. That's not to say there shouldn't be change, but from my perspective, having one public hearing, which is all that we had on this particular issue, is insufficient. For the 2013 election, there were 3 issues, I believe, referenda questions. Going from 4 to 6 was on that one. Should the election terms go from 2 to 4 years? And I believe the third one was, should the timing of the election change to the gubernatorial or presidential? That 2012 CRC had the wisdom of recommending that there be referenda. And the mayor and council who served then, and I think 2 members of this body probably served at that time. I think the mayor and Councilmember Pershela served. That mayor and council put those decisions before the body politic in the largest sense to elicit some information about what were the sentiments. I know I've heard arguments saying, well, those people who vote are privileged and therefore you're only asking the privileged people. But it's different now. At that point, people had to go to the polls. I don't think we even had early voting in 2013, and I see the head shaking, so I think I'm right on that. It's very different now. Anyone, once we've done the ballot verifying your address and that you live in the city, you don't have to ask for a ballot. You receive this ballot in your home. There is no barrier to getting a ballot. It's not like we have, and it will be in multiple languages. So we're also increasing the ability of those to know what is going on, because the ballot will be not just in English, it's mandated in Spanish. And if they need help, they can get help for simplified Chinese or other languages. I believe that we should be having it on a referenda question, and that in fact, it may encourage more people to actually put those little check marks on the ballot, because it is so transformative in the way our city is run. And in addition, I would suggest that at the debates, and there are 3 televised debates, there are more than that, but 3 are televised, that you find out the candidates who have announced and who are participating in the debates, how do they feel about each of these issues? So that when you do cast your ballot, you know what likely would be the outcome of the people for whom you are voting. So my sentiment is at this point that it should go on a referenda question for this one, and there are a few others I feel are equally seminal.
Councilmember Pershela.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Feinberg that these should go on the on referenda. I do, however, want to make my position clear on 16 and 17-year-old votes, and I'm on record on this. I do not support it personally. I actually said this in front of a CASA group, And I've said it in a few emails to some of the people who've opined upon it in our email. So that's my personal position, but I do agree that this is one that should go to referendum. And I did read the Raskin article, which is like a 4-hour read. I mean, it wasn't, it was extremely interesting, but it took a while to get through it. But it beat even in Tacoma Park for non-citizen voting, they put this on a referendum. It did pass narrowly. But you know, so even there, it went through referendum first.
Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple more factoids, and I'll end here. I mean, I've already voiced my support, but I do look forward to seeing what the public thinks about it. There are instances where we allow people, adolescents less than 18-year-old, to make medical decisions. Those involve contexts where, as Councilmember Ashton stated, we call them mature minors, so people who even moved out, so a number of people in foster care, military, married, or have children, which does happen. So I think that there are certainly instances where adolescents make even more fundamental decisions in their right in choosing who would elect them to represent them, and there's precedent for that too. I do look forward to discussion and more input from the community. Thanks so much.
Commissioner Valeri wanted to be heard.
Just super briefly on the issue of a referendum. For whatever is put on the ballot, and if we have a referendum, to what purpose? So you hear back at that point what the majority of existing voters feel on this issue. Then what will the next mayor and council do or will not do? Is this merely just a way to punt on basic civil rights issues? Because that is truly what it feels like. If we put on some basic civil rights on for the city referendum, how do we feel that they would end up? What were the loudest voices in certain time periods in our country? They would not have been necessarily the ones that a just or equitable society would go towards. So I don't believe, and trust me, and you all know, I'm a community person. There's a balance though, between what you're hearing from the community, right? And essentially what is the right thing to do given this time period and where we are in history. And so that would be my caution insofar as referendum go, that basic rights like this should not be placed on a referendum.
And just to follow up to that, if I may, you put this on a referendum. We already have comments from people in the record that don't have Rockville addresses. You put this on the referendum. This and the non-citizen voting on the referendum. It's going to engender far greater input outside the sphere of the residents of Rockville and possibly influence the political discourse that the city has in a way that I don't think would be something that we'd be looking forward to.
Councilmember Dr. Prince.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the points are very well taken. Being African American, I think it jump back to the 1860s. I don't think a whole lot of folks prior to the ratification of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments would want folks like me to vote anyway, those who were able to vote at the time, as it were. I do think that there is, and so there's a potential, as was articulated by both of those who just spoke, of engendering a fair amount of vitriol and pushback. I think also, though, I think there is something to be said about hearing from folks who live here. I think the people that we've heard from so far have been have the privilege, have the time to be able to participate either in person or to have the time or wherewithal to submit verbal comments. But as Councilmember Feinberg stated, sending a ballot to everybody gives them a choice. Everybody who's able to vote and recognizing, as we all recognize that, though we had greater turnout, which still was only like 25% of the eligible voters. But I think it is one way to get input and feedback. I think for many of our decisions, even the banal and the seemingly trivial, there's a lot of steps that go into making sure that we have sufficient public input before making change. But I do want to also mention that, the expansion of the members of mayor and council. That actually was voted down in the referendum that occurred 10 years ago. Yet this mayor and council voted to move forward with the expansion. So I think there is benefit in getting feedback. I think there has been, as we've already seen, some misinformed comments. But I think it is important that we get feedback from the people. I think that's just part of the process. But your points are well taken about the implications about opening this up. Whatever the mayor and council has the ability to make a decision, notwithstanding the comments, but I think the comments are important for us to make, for whomever to make that decision, whoever's in this body in the future. That's all. Sorry about being long-winded.
That's all right. Councilmember Pershela.
Thank you, Dr. Miles. You are hardly ever long-winded, so don't worry about it. I'll just say that in a referendum, you really only get the Rockville voice by definition. So even though people can advocate up until the election is taken, those who actually vote in the referendum are Rockville residents. And my experience is that if you care enough to vote in a city election, you've cared enough to at least do minimal research. And anyway, I've made my position clear, and people can take that for what it's worth. But I do think a referendum, is fine for a lot of these questions.
Councilmember Ashton.
Madam Mayor, I realize you haven't had a chance to speak on this. Do you want us to pause?
No, I'm fine. I'm
Okay.
listening, and I
right.
think there's a motion to go to referendum with a second for that. And I think Dr. Miles said yes, he was, while he would support it, he agrees to go to referendum.
So yeah, I'm hearing that we're going referenda. I also think that there was so much value in the last public hearing. I think I would be also open to having another public hearing on some of these issues because people bring so much to the table. Being on this body is not necessarily about voting and putting your own opinions forward, but listening to the evidence and listening to the community and trying to suss out where our community is and also doing what you think is right. But there is a listening portion of that. We've done lots of listening for far less issues, and I'm committed to listening to our community and just hearing what people have to say. I do think that, to be fair, I think it would be interesting to also do a survey of our youth in high schools so that we get a sense of what they care about. And I don't know if that's technically possible. I would not be a referenda for sure, but I think that it gives voice to students to hear what their opinions are and how they feel about it.
Councilmember Fugger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a question for the city attorney. Would you want a specific motion and direction and to the city clerk on this item? Because I don't think I actually heard a motion on this at all. Is that correct?
Yes.
Process-wise? Okay, Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I move that we direct the city attorney and city clerk DCO to come back with I guess it's a resolution to put a question on the November 2023 ballot to expand the voter franchise by lowering the voting age to people who are 16 and 17 years old.
Councilmember Pershela.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you.
Speaking of ballot referenda, the next two items were the ones that the commission is indicating would most likely be appropriate for referendum. One would be the term limits of mayor and council, and this is because this had come up previously on referenda, and it would be appropriate for the voters to, again, have that issue. The Charter Review Commission does have a recommendation for limiting consecutive terms of those serving in either the office of mayor or city council. the majority of the Charter Review Commission recommends that no later than the 2027 election, 3 consecutive 4-year terms of the mayor and council become law for those who are elected by the residents of Rockville. Special note is made to the term consecutive. If a council member serves 3 terms, it would not preclude the council member to serve 3 terms as mayor. After an elected has served 3 consecutive 4-year terms, there is nothing that prevents a person from being elected to serve another 3 consecutive 4-year terms when elected in the election that follows 4 years after completion of the last term.
Mr. Owen, did I hear you say that this had come up before on a referenda question?
That was my understanding, but it could be.
No, not this one.
Yeah,
Not
I
term
think this
limits.
one has.
Okay, I had been provided some information.
Not term limits.
Okay.
Councilmember Feinberg.
Yes, thank you. I'm actually going to look towards the chair of the BOSE from his experience or anybody else. What is your guidance on the optimal number of referenda questions? And because there are many that are worthwhile, and as has been mentioned with the term limit, but some may rise to being more critical to our governing. So that's why I'm asking at this point.
Thanks for letting me have the mic. You're back. Okay. I think you need to be cautious about adding too many, because again, you have the same problem with turning the ballot into a book.
Yep.
It discourages people from voting. So I think once you get beyond 3 or 4 tops, there are adverse effects.
Thank you. That was sort of what I was thinking, de minimis returns and voter fatigue.
I've asked this
Councilor
question.
Graham.
I asked this question before, and I was given a number range of 2 to 3, actually.
I think that's probably better. Yeah.
Councilmember Dr. Miles and then Councilmember Prashela.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the comments, and I think generally speaking that makes sense. I'm curious, this is just a question, this is not to be snarky, but what are the data on 2 versus 3 versus 4? I only say that because I'm super impressed by my neighbors, folks who serve on boards and commissions. We have really smart and engaged folks, as we've seen come to participate in meetings and such. However, I do know that even in the most recent county council election, there was stuff my eyes kind of glazed over. So this is just me, anecdotally. But on this particular topic, I certainly support putting this on a referendum. I do think that there is value in having a form of term limits to get new ideas in there. This would certainly affect me personally, but it's okay. I think there are smart people out there who are going to replace me one day too. I'm looking forward to that day, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Councilmember Prashela.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going back to last year's county. Well, it wasn't a county election, it was a gubernatorial election in which there were many offices that were up, all the way from, our representatives in Congress, the comptroller, our state representatives, our county representatives, the board of education, and then there were referendum. The attorney, all that kind of stuff, and then after that there were probably 6 or 7 referendum questions. But that to me, a municipal election is really just this municipality, and we have a mayor to vote for, and we have 4 council or 6 council members to vote for, and after that you go right to the referendum questions. To me, that's not a big burden. That this is a once every 4-year process now. And that's our chance to, if we have 6 things we're interested in hearing about, I don't think we should shy away from that. It's not a book at that point. It's 2 kinds of offices, and it's referendum questions.
A normal ballot for a municipality doesn't go over that 8.5 by 11. So if anything carries over 8.5 by 11, you would have a 2-page ballot. If you're on a ballot marking device go on into a vote center to cast your ballot, it would be all on one device, but in the mailer, it would be 2 pages.
Right, but what I'm pointing out is that depending on how many people run for council,
Exactly.
that
too.
But you know, in that case, the natural division is, you know, put 1 page for the mayor race, 1 page for the council race, and then 1 page for the referendum question, so you're not splitting a particular kind of race onto 2 pages. But that's all handleable. And you know, we did it, I don't know how many pages we had for the gubernatorial election. It was 3 or 4, I think, by the time we got done with it, but we handled it.
Each page is a cost, and so we'd have to think about that, and you're also increasing the cost of the ballot packet itself and the cost to mail it.
Councilmember Pershella.
Yeah, no sense arguing about something that may not be worth arguing about in the first place. So we have already said the age question should go on to the referendum, and to me, the districts is a natural, and ranked choice voting. Those would be the 3 I'd be most interested in. You know, if we have any more than that, I don't know.
Councilmember Feinberg.
Thank you. So I'm just going to go from that and give you my take on that. In addition to the one that we've already just voted on, I would include the one on expanding the voter franchise without regard to citizenship, and I would include the districts question. And the term limits, if we went to 4, I'd go to term limits. If not, if we kept it 3, I would put that as a lower tier. Not that it's not important, but if we're keeping to a 3.
Councilmember Ashton.
I was going to suggest also the term limits, the age, and the 2, expanding the voter franchise, because I think we have to hear from the public on those items. It looks like the districts needs, that could be something where we could direct staff to get more research done, because I do think we want to make sure that if we were to explore that we would look at making sure it's equitable. Right now we have 10 districts, around 10, right, Sarah? And we have 6 seats for council. So that is something I'd want to make sure that the public understands. There would be fairness plan. Redrawing boundaries should not be political. I just think that there's some work to do.
And to tag on to that, there are a number of issues that the commission believes there should be further research even before it possibly goes to a referendum, including the non-citizen voter, because there are logistics issues that that the commission believes would require further research and advice through resources the commission did not have. And for example, if there was going to be the non-citizen voting issue, there has to be the generation of a separate voting roll. What does that take? What are the costs for that? If there's going to be the expansion of the franchise for lawful permanent residents, how are those documents verified by the city clerk's office? That equipment, that database access is not likely present in this building. Is it at the police department? There's a lot of other additional issues that need to be fleshed out and researched, especially for costs, before it goes to a voter, because our understanding is that voters will likely want to know what that looks like before they vote on it.
Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that with a number of things that were discussed, there are a number of things that are yet to be determined, even, expanding the voting franchise to folks 16 and above, cost and such. I don't think that necessarily precludes getting information about it. As we saw with the expansion of mayor and council, I mean, it's been 10 years in the making since the referendum to the actual vote. And if, as our CCDCO, Mrs. Taylor Farrell stated, that we might end up having a longer ballot that might cost a little more money, I figure do it all at once, get the information now, and then we can figure out what to do with the information, or the subsequent mayor and council can figure out what to do with that information. But I'm for just, as Councilmember Shayla said, it's a municipal election. We can put 3, 4, 5, 6, however many is needed to get the information. And out of the spirit of what I mentioned earlier in terms of getting feedback from our residents, the age, put that on there, the expansion to lawful permanent, our neighbors who are not citizens. I put districts on there, I put term limits. I think I don't have a necessarily limit on how many I would put on there. If we're going to do it, just do it right.
Councilmember Shayla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 5 things that I would put on, one being the non-citizen voting. I do think, however, the term non-citizen needs to be carefully put on the ballot. The district's question, the age question, which we already agreed to, the ranked choice, and the term limits are the 5 that I would put on as referendum questions. And I think on, for example, the ranked choice, that's a relatively new innovation, but yet we're seeing it across the nation in important races, and New York City, I believe, was one, the state of Alaska was another. And so people are starting to become familiar with that, but it'd be really, to me, valuable to see how people react to that particular question, because it could resolve some issues. Thank you.
Councilmember Ashton.
I saw that the county is doing their own charter review commission, and so I was just wondering, are they going to be exploring some things that change their voting process? I think that's something that will be beneficial for mayor and council or future mayor and councils to know, because I know we rely on their operational system to conduct our elections. So I'm looking at our DCO to see if maybe we can find out more about what the scope of that will be. In addition, I think there's some state legislation that would enable counties to look at ranked choice voting. There's some things that they're exploring as well. So I think that that would be also interesting to see how that shakes out. On the districts, I think there's some people who would say, okay, I'm for districts if there are X out large and X, combination, or people who wanted all districts. I wonder if there's enough information for people to weigh what that would look like and what are they voting for. That's just one of my, maybe there's some public hearings or discussions we might have, but I think that's important so people know what the outcome might be. They might vote for it if it's one way versus another.
Councilmember Feinberg.
Thank you. So I appreciate what you were saying about the districts a few minutes ago, with many of the questions that an election consultant could look at. But many of those were implementation details. I think before we go out and spend a lot of money, because a consultant would come in and say, well, are you thinking about 10 districts? Are you thinking about, you want to make sure that the number of voters in each district are equal as best as possible, and looking at geographic boundaries, looking at equity issues. I mean, there's lots of ways to slice and dice districts. All that would be exceedingly expensive and laborious. And so my thinking is, and the way I would want, why I would want districts on a referendum, is at the higher level, the 10,000 foot look at this. What are the pros and cons of them? I can think them and rattle them off, pros and cons to them, and have that kind of conversation without going and engaging, going through the RFP process, which takes 6 months or so. Sorry, the screen went off. That often takes about 6 months, because it would have to be tailored for Rockville. You're not going to be able to bridge that in all likelihood. And until you would get a report would be a year. Let's find out if people have just, if that gets any traction, and have those conversations during debates. Have it, at any gatherings, know where different candidates think about it, just like I was saying before, and Councilmember Miles, I believe, was saying, let's be transparent. So I appreciate what you're saying, but those are all details for if we know that the mayor and council, who are the final body voting on a charter change like that, their advisory referenda, which direction we're going in. So I would advocate still it goes on a referenda.
And just to clarify, the resolution tasked the Charter Review Commission to look at representative districts, and the boundaries for the districts is what we were charged with. And a lot of this perspective is addressing that second half of and the boundaries. And the position that the commission has is we do not have the qualifications, the resources to make a recommendation on that. And that if there was going to be further assessment on both halves, then it would require that further review.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ashton, then Councilmember Pershela.
If we put it on referenda, I do think that we might want to ask, do you want all districts or a mix?
Right.
Because that will help us. People may shut
Yes.
it down altogether
Yes.
if it's one way or the other.
Agreed.
Councilmember Pershela.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I agree with Councilmember Feinberg and Councilmember Ashton both on that we're looking for the high-level take on it from the voters. But voters are already familiar with districts. They have to deal with it at the county level. Many of them lived in cities with wards. There are cities around us, or municipalities around us that already have wards. So it's not a new concept. I think we're just looking, do you want to do this, yes or no? And then there are the many detailed questions after that. What I'm wondering is how we move this along, because you know, I could, or any one of us could make a motion to put four more things on as referenda items, and then ask city staff to come back with, you know, language based on what they've heard us say. That would be the simplest way to do it. You know, so unless somebody objects, I'd like to move that we add the following questions to as advisory referenda. First is non-citizen voting, second is districts, third is term limits, and fourth is ranked choice voting.
Councilmember Ashton.
Say age, the 16, 17.
Yeah, that was the first one.
We already did that one. So
Okay, so you're just,
Captured
I'm
I'm-
saying it because I'm thinking about the number.
that.
No, I
in
understand.
there.
that it'd be 5 in total, but I only moved 4 because the first,
But it's-
the age has already been approved.
Okay, and would you be open, I worry about the number of questions, but I do want, if we do, for districts, I do think we should have a Part A, Part B question.
Since it's not been seconded yet, I will go with that. I will amend my motion to include for the districts, the Part A and Part B as described by Councilmember Ashton.
Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I second the amended motion as made.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Councilmember Feinberg, did you vote?
No, I didn't, because I didn't know we were closing the discussion that quickly.
Oh, I apologize.
That's why, so I took a breath. I'm sorry. But you all have started to vote. It wasn't that I didn't want to vote. But you've started the vote, so you put me in a quandary by that. I'm sorry.
Councilmember Ashton.
Madam Mayor, do you want to retake the vote, Councilman Feinberg? Do you want to comment? I would like to hear what you have to say.
But I just have one comment, that's all, if I may. But I don't know if we can do that, so I have to ask the city attorney. I don't know if you can do that.
You haven't finalized the vote, so you can ask a question.
So my concern is about the number of referenda. That's where I'm agonizing. I empathize and agree with many of what Councilmember Pershela put forth. The concern to me is 5. That's where I'm struggling. I'll just leave it. No, where do you
With
have
the
6?
question, district is a part 2 question.
Oh, okay.
A 2-part question.
That's why I was struggling, and why, for me, I may have to vote no, not because I don't support these going on referenda, but the number of referenda, in listening to our chair, who was speaking about either 3 or 4, or 2 or 3. In my mind, then it was kind of coalescing around 3, in my mind. And this is 5 or 6, depending how you count it. That's what's giving me the pause.
Can you share which ones that you were going to put up, what you were suggesting?
Well, 16, 17 is already on there. Districts I would, and I would do again, I'd finesse the language, but the non-citizen voting for right now. For me, that would be 3 or 4, depending, because that one has 2 parts.
Councilmember Pershela.
Right, I get that concern, but, one of the things we're probably going to do in this upcoming budget is a citizen survey, that we hadn't done in some time, and that's going to just be chock full of probably 70 or 80 items. People who want to answer it. I personally, data collection was my profession until I retired, and I see no problem with 5 or 6, given that one of them is Part A and Part B. It's really 6. I have no problem with that. And you're going, every 4 years, this is your chance. And people, they can avoid that if they want to, but I think a lot of people will be more than willing to sort through 6 questions, which is effectively what the motion says now.
No, I'm just going to say that I am voting for them to go into referenda, even though I don't agree with some of the questions. I think going to districts would destroy the sense of community that we have in the city. And I think you then place the position of the mayor in a very interesting situation when the mayor is elected at large and the 7 council members would be from districts. So there'd be a lot of horse trading and a lot of, interesting collaboration there. I really think the reason that Rockville is making the progress that we're making is because we are supposed to be all one city. Each council member is supposed to represent the whole city. The mayor represents the whole city. And I went for it because I think I want to hear from the public, but I sure as heck hope the public understands what the ramifications could be if we go to districts. Councilmember Pershela.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we're in this awkward position where we actually started to vote, and then we allowed some commentary. I think we should just finish the vote. I don't necessarily, I made the motion on these now 6 items, and I don't agree with a few of them. But I think this is hearing from the voters, and I think the voters, probably the highest educated city in this country, almost, if not quite, are going to be able to sort through that ballot. And, so I don't have any problem with the number. I think we should just get these are advisory referendum. We should just get the opinion of the voters on it.
That's what I said.
Yeah, that's right. So I call the question. Let's have the vote.
Do you want to vote again? Do people want to vote again, or does just Councilmember Feinberg want to vote?
Well, I think 4 of us already voted, and now we're waiting for the 5th.
That's what I said.
Why don't we just vote, if I can ask? I think it feels a little better.
Do you just want to retake the vote? I'm fine with that.
I support that.
That's
if
fine.
that's legally
So the motion has already been made and seconded. We can retake the vote. That's fine with me.
Can I have
All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ashton.
Can I ask, what would be the process to come up with a very unbiased way of writing these questions? That's why I want to make sure. I mean, that you can sway people with how you ask the question, and I think we need to look at what other jurisdictions have done to be fair. And, I think that's, and the choice on districts is not A or B, it could be also stay at large. So I think that we need to make sure that we are not biasing the public.
The BSC will take a stab at that. We did it in the 2013, and we'll come back with them. You have to make sure that you're writing these questions in a form of understanding on the 8th grade level, so that you're not writing them in detail where the voter won't understand what these questions are.
Ms. Farrell, could we ask the attorney to take care of this?
If that's the direction of the mayor and council.
Councilmember Priscilla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just curious why we wouldn't let the BSOE do it, and the city attorney can always opine on their work before it comes to us. And that's their job. So why don't we let them do it? And we have approved questions put forward to the mayor and council to go on the ballot. And, we have that check and balance process, so we can, from our perspective, make sure that not only the questions, but the answer options are clearly written. And I thank Councilmember Ashton for bringing up the options are just as important as the questions.
Well, and that's what I was following up on, was Councilmember Ashton's comment. And I do believe that it is important how the questions are worded. And I do remember when we had referenda questions before, and there was a lot of wordsmithing that went on from the mayor and council's perspective on those questions that came forward. I was just trying to streamline the process. We don't have a lot of time left. So that's all I was trying to do. Councilmember Ashton.
I was just curious if the BOSC has an opinion on this, given the workload you all have to do, which I have listened in on some of your meetings. So.
Sure, okay. I've taken a quick survey of the members of the BSC in the room. Oh, I'm sorry. I've taken a quick survey of the members of the BSC still in the room, and we would like to draft these. I'm an attorney, but one of the things I've learned is sometimes if you let attorneys draft things, they get too wordy, too complicated. And I think we know how to do this at an 8th grade level, right, Steve? We'll work on it. Okay, so we're happy to do it, and we'd like to do it.
All right, Mr. Owen, floor is yours.
So we were going through in an orderly fashion until just now. There are a number of provisions that had not been touched upon that are still in the recommendations, and the rest of the ones on the list with you today are ones that set forth additional research or information that really needs to be gathered because the commission did not have specific resources available to it to answer some of these really difficult questions. One of the ones that's very apparent would be the issue about the resign to run provision. I know that was a topic that was important to the mayor and council, but because of the conflict with the state law that is potential, very early on the commission had requested that this be referred back for the city attorney and possibly the state's attorney office to give a opinion on it, and as far as I'm aware, that has not yet been rendered. But that is the type of issue that will need to have a legal opinion before the mayor and council can really address whether or not that is something that can be implemented, and the commission just didn't have the resources to make that happen. The other issues that have not been now referred for the referendum: the multi-dwelling building outreach plan to guarantee election mail and materials reach residents. That was a topic that came up earlier in the conversation today. It's a topic that comes up frequently. It's something that the recommendations need to be weighed in from the Board of Supervisors of Elections and any other avenues to get information as to how one can be implemented, and implemented with the barriers of having apartments owned privately and not necessarily allowing people just to go intruding to distribute campaign literature. It is a problem, not just in this city, but in any jurisdiction for which you have multi-dwelling units, whether it be apartments, residential living centers for seniors, or just condominiums. So that is a challenge that still needs to be further addressed.
Councilmember Ashton.
Thank you. And I also should note, if you want to sit at
No,
this
I'm fine.
Thank you for, hanging in there with us. I have a question. I don't know if Ms. Moran is here. However, I thought that there was some legislation about being able to get into apartment buildings from that perspective at the state level. I don't know where it has gone. The second question I have is, this idea came from a resident, is that something that can be tied to residential licenses, that you have to be able to, for election purposes, allow the residents to have the same access to the electorate as others. So that's just a question. I don't know if that's a possibility. Maybe that's something our city attorney can share more information in the future. But I was just trying to find creative ways that residents have come up with in dealing with this issue.
Other topics that still need further referral or input from other boards and commissions or staff would be the recommendation that there be a strategy to ensure the safety and well-being of voters who are survivors of intimate partner violence, a target of stalking and harassment, people who are unhoused, witnesses to felony offenses, and immediate family members of an individual eligible for address confidentiality. I know that that is a topic that does cause some procedural and administrative hurdles, including inquiries about the voter rolls for campaigns. So there has to be further research and information provided before that can be further addressed. But it is an important topic, especially for victims of domestic violence. And one
Madam
that came
Mayor.
up earlier is,
Sorry.
no, sorry.
I have a question on that topic. Our schools actually, some of them, the ones I've interacted with, actually do a pretty good job where there's an opt-out option for child custody and situations of intimate partner violence where they can opt out of directories, for example. I just wonder if we can pose that question to the state or the county as to whether they might allow something like that.
There are confidential roles on the state level via the county voter registration. And what happens is that, like, I know there are judges, there are others who are on those confidential roles for the city of Rockville. We were approached by several of them in 2019. And what happens is that that role is obtained by the county via the state, and they tell us which ballots from which district to bring up there. We oversee them placing the ballots in for mailing, but we're not allowed to see who those names are and where they're going. So that is a provision in the state rules of their voter database.
We need to just educate people on how to become on the confidential
I think it's
list.
required, it's a law. You have to go through the courts. You just don't say because you want it
Right.
confidential. It's a law.
But something that's on our city website, for example, of how would someone apply for that if needed?
I think we'd have to go through the state and ask how does someone get their voter registration as confidential?
I would like to get that information.
Okay.
And the final provision, and this came up earlier today when I dealt with filling the vacancy on the BSC, is the recommendation that the code be reviewed for internal consistency and also in plain language. There was not enough time for the Charter Review Commission to go through the entire code with the amount of work that we were tasked to identify every incidence of language that was not either internally consistent or confusing, and the recommendation would be that this be referred to the city attorney's office for consultation on that topic. But it is not an uncommon issue in the city code with the ordinances not being decipherable. So that would be the final recommendation that we had put forth to the mayor and council.
I don't see any hands, but I say thank you very much for this conversation tonight. Amazing. And I'm sorry you had to stand there the whole time, Kevin.
No
Thank
worries.
you.
I appreciate being invited back, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
And thank you to the rest of the Charter Review Commission. You all had yeoman's work to do, so thank you.